Kalkadosh Boker Or Masechet Zevachim Daf Yomi Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph 13a1. We're starting from the Mishnah, which is going to be 2, 4, 5 lines, 6 lines down. HaPesach ve'achatat sheshechatan shelo lishman. What happens if you have a Pesach and a Chatat? Right, the Pesach and the sin offering, which you did shchita shelo lishma, meaning not for the sake of that korban, right? So therefore, or kibel, you accepted the blood, or halach, or you took the blood, or zarak, or you sprinkled the blood shelo lishman. Remember, there are 4 processes in a sacrifice. There's the slaughtering, the receiving of the blood, the transporting of the blood, and the sprinkling of the blood. Those are 4 different processes. So if you did any of those processes, shelo lishman, or lishman v'shelo lishman, which means that you did one of them, let's say lishma, and one of them lo lishma, which means the beginning you had a lishma, and then afterwards you didn't have a lishma, or you did in the beginning shelo lishma, and then at the end you did have the lishma, meaning in the same process you started lishma and changed shelo lishma, or not lishma and changed shelo lishma. In the same process, meaning not only in separate processes, even in the same process. So I'm receiving the blood at the beginning for a chatat. All of a sudden, no, I'm receiving it for an asham. Right? Or you did the opposite.
Does it matter if you did it intentionally? Or
1 minute. We didn't speak about it yet. 1 minute. Pesulim, it's going to be pasul. So any type of lo lishma, disqualified. Pasul. Kates alishma. What's the case? What's the case of lishman and lo lishman? So he says the Shem Pesach or the Shem Shlamim. Right? That means you did it for the Pesach and the Shlamim. Remember that a Pesach is a type of a Shlamim. Right? The peace offering. Shelo lishma means lishman, the Shem Shlamim, Shem Pesach. Shazevach nifsal bechol arba'at dvarim. Because the korban is going to be disqualified in any of these 4 actions, whether it's the slaughtering, shchita, kibul, the receiving of the blood, hiluch, the transporting of the blood, zirika, and sprinkling of the blood. Rabbi Shimon machshir behiluch. Rabbi Shimon argues and he says the transporting of the blood, there's no problem. Why? Shayomer, because you say shar belo shchita, v'shelo bekabala v'shuvizka. You cannot have a sacrifice without slaughtering. You cannot have a sacrifice without receiving the blood, and you cannot have a sacrifice without zirika. But you could do it without iluch. Why? Do the shchita mamash right on his own, on the side of the mizbeach, and by doing it right on the side of the mizbeach, you sprinkle it right away. You don't have to do a alicha. So if you don't have to do alicha, meaning if I could take that out of the process, so even if you do it, right, even when you do it, right, that's what he has to pray for, right? So which means that if the fact that you don't need the halicha, so if you don't need the halicha, so it's not going to be posel. It's not going to disqualify the walking, the transporting, because anyway, you could do it right there. That's Shitat Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Eliezer Omer. Rabbi Eliezer. Right? Look in the bottom of the footnote, by the way, doctor. You have there, some people are Gores Rabbi Elazar. Right? Okay, so here it says Rabbi Eliezer, and then it says some people say it's Rabbi Elazar, because it could be that it's Rabbi Shimon and Lazar. Right? It's Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon. There's a whole thing here, right? Again, there's different, sense. So here it's Rabbi Elazar Omer, Hamalech b'makom shu tzarich lalech. If you're going to walk a place where you have to walk, right, with the blood, machshava poselet, right? So then the machshava is going to be disqualifying it, meaning your mindset. But if you're going to go somewhere where you weren't supposed to go, so it's not poselet. It's not going to come, and it's not going to be posel. Says the Gemara. Gemara on Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, in the middle of the page. The Kabbalah mi psala. He says what? Receiving the blood, you could disqualify it. We learned in the Braita. When it says in the pasuk that you're going to accept, right? You're going to bring it close. That's the receiving of the blood. Are you going to tell me that it's kabbalat adam or zrika? Are you going to tell me it's receiving the blood, or maybe it's only the sprinkling of the blood? As kishumen, when it says the word vizareku, which means to throw, to sprinkle, so it already tells you it's a sprinkling. So what is then the word vikrivu that they brought it close, like a korban, to kabbalat adam, or the receiving of the blood? It says b'nei Aharon HaKohanim sheteh bekohen kasher uvikli sharet. When it says b'nei Aharon HaKohanim, only when it says, because remember, shchita is kosher bezarim. Anybody could do the shchita. Only the receiving of the blood onwards has to be done by a kohen. This is b'nei Aharon HaKohanim. So therefore, that's why it has to be done by a kohen with kli sharet. So he says, Amar Rabbi Akiva, minay lekabbalah shelo teh bekohen. How do you know that the kabbalah has to be with a kohen kasher and a kli sharet? Has to be a kohen kasher and with a kli sharet. He says Ne'emar kan, but it says over here b'nei Aaron. Ne'emar lehalan ele shemo b'nei Aaron hakolim mishuchim. Ma lehalan bekohen kasher uvikli sharet. Avkan bekohen kasher uvikli sharet. Meaning, just like it says over there, these are the names of the children of Aaron, which are how do you say mishuchim? They're anointed, right, to become kohanim. They have to be kosher. So that's why it's the Gezerah Shavah. Kohanim ksherim and kli sharet. So to over here has to be with kohanim ksherim and kli sharet. Amar bitarfon, says the bitarfon, akapeach et banai. He's going to bury his children. If he didn't hear the differentiation, lavchin and fresh, kabbalah lizika, to the differentiation between the receiving of the blood and the sprinkling of blood. The ending lifresh, and I don't even have to explain. I cannot explain it though because he forgot it. So Amar Rabbi Akiva says, Rabbi Akiva, ani fresh. I'm going to explain it to you. What? Kabbalah lo asaba machshava k'maaseh. By the receiving of the blood, they did not make the thought like the action, but the zrika they did do the machshava like the maaseh. What does that mean? Kablo b'chutz, if you accepted the blood outside of the azara, you're not going to be chayav with karet. But if you sprinkled outside of the, right, if you sprinkled the blood outside, you do get karet. Kablu psulim, if people that are disqualified accepted the blood, meaning the psulim for kiuna, right? So ena chayavim alav. They're not going to be chayav mitah b'dei shamayim. So psulim, but if they did the sprinkling, they're going to be chayav alav mitah b'dei shamayim. That means you see from here that the sprinkling is much more strict than the receiving of the blood. Amalo Rabbi Tarfon says Rabbi Tarfon ha'avodah. Right? He comes and he says, he swears, shelo iteta yaminu small, that's exactly what I heard. You didn't turn to the right or to the left. Ani shamati ve'eni lefresh. I heard it and I wasn't able to explain it. But you said exactly the way that I learned it. And he told him, Akiva, if anybody separates from you, it's like they're separating from life. Mamash, Rabbi Tarfon is coming and saying, Rabbi Akiva, this is our Akiva.
Tarfon's no slouch.
100% not. Right? And this is Rabbi Akiva. Rabbenu Akiva, yeah? Amar Rava. Rava comes and he says, La kashya. It's not a question. He says, why? He comes and he says, yeah, Rabbi Akiva. Yeah. He says, why? Daikanami diktani shazevach nifsal velo ketani mitpagel. Sorry. No, but did I skip or not? Oh, sorry. Amar Rava. So Rava comes and he says, right? Like I said, a question. There's a difference between pigul and lo lishma. Lo lishma just means that you're not doing it lo lishma. You're not doing it for lishma. Pigul means I'm doing it for something else, which makes it into pigul. For example, I'm going to do it now outside of the proper time. So it's called pigul, right? Remember, outside of the proper place is not. It's not the same. There's a difference between the proper place and proper time. Right? Time, right? Which means, which one? No, pigul is only proper time. Only proper time. If I do the shchita and not mekomo. It's not. It's only the proper time, right? So he says, "Kam b'machshevet shelo lishma." Here it's just lo lishma. So you could also bring a proof shazev himself lo ktani mitpagel. Shemanya, that's also it's nifsal. It didn't say it becomes pigul. So says the Gemara, "Machshevet pigul lo pasla beKabbalah." He says what? Pigul does not disqualify the receiving of the blood. Vatanya, we learned in the Braita. I would have thought to say that it only affects the zrika. How do we know that it's also going to affect the shchita and Kabbalah? We're talking about things of food. So you see from here, right, that it's also going to become, right, the problem of pigul and all these things. Right? I would have thought to say that it's also the sprinkling of the leftovers of the blood. Or bringing the limbs. So Zrika was part of it. So why do we take it out? Right? To make a hekesh. What is a hekesh? Remember, hekesh is juxtaposition. When you put two things together. To teach you, just like Zrika is miuchedet, which is an avodah and me'akevet kapara, so to anything which is an avodah me'akevet kapara. This comes to exclude shvichat shirayim v'ktarat emunim, she'en me'akvidin kapara, which means this. What happens if I didn't bring the leftover limbs to the mizbeach? Or I didn't pour the leftover of the blood in the two holes. You know, there were two little tiny holes. So they're not ma'akev. So since it's not ma'akev, anything which is not ma'akev, the kapara, and not ma'akev anything, essential. That's a good word. Thank you. So if it's not going to be essential, so therefore there's not going to be a problem of pigul or anything else, which applies to them. Because pigul has to be only something which is essential. It's the main part of the korban. If it's not the main part of the korban, there's not going to be a problem of pigul. Okay, Yud Gimel Amud 13b. Yeah?
Just as an aside, Rabbi.
Yes. There's the Gemara la kashya. It's not a question. Ha de amar areni shochet amena lekabel dama lemachar, veha de amar areni lekabel dama amena lishpoch shirayim lemachar. Says, what did you do? The first time you came and you said that you're doing shchita in order to receive the blood for tomorrow. So therefore, that's the problem of the pigul. But here you said areni lekabel dama amena lishpoch shirayim. Then I'm going to spill the leftover bloods tomorrow. So therefore, since it wasn't an essential part, again, it's not going to be pigul. Elmaleh Ahum Rabbanan. There was one of the students that he came, one of the rabbis that he told Rava, are you going to tell me that the spilling of the leftover bloods or the bringing of the limbs is not going to disqualify with your mindset? But we learned in the Braita, I would have thought to say that it's only going to be when you eat it. How do we know that it's coming to include shfichat shirayim v'aktarat emunim? So Tamulora comes to teach you, why does it say twice double expression of eating? Right? Achalta ota. Yeah? Why does it achila? Even achol yachel. All right? There are two eatings of the bed. One of them is eating of the human being, and one of them is the eating of the mizbeach. The kilu that the mizbeach is also eating. So therefore he comes and he says, so that when we're talking about this concept,
We don't.
1 minute. So therefore he comes and he says, so therefore since we're talking about that, so therefore it sees that the mizbeach has to eat, whether it's the limbs or the blood. So says the Like that's not a question. This is what he's saying. Right? Here we're talking about that there's going to be a problem of pigul when you say I'm going to sprinkle the blood, right, in order to sprinkle the leftovers tomorrow. And
To pour the remnants.
Right, to pour the remnants. And here we're talking about that you say that I'm going to pour the remnants in order to bring the limbs tomorrow. Okay? So Amar Rav Yehuda ben Rechia, Shamati shetfilat etzba mefagelet bechata primit. I heard that even with the tfilat etzba, right, outside of the proper time, that's also going to make pigul by the inner chataot. Remember that the inner chataot, right, was done with the finger, and it was done on the four corners. On the outside of Mizbeach, which is the copper one, right, the one on the outside, Mizbeach nechoshet, right, the one which is outside of the Hechal, that one was done shne matanot shenabah. It was two that are four, because he used to go on the corner and it's split, and the other side corner and split. 2 or 4. The one is a chatat, the inner chatat offerings.
There's two, the inner and an outer.
Yes,
chatat.
there's the outer chatats and then the inner chatats. Inner chatat is a special one. So the inner chatat was only done inside, and that inside was a much smaller mizbeach, and that was done in the four corners. So Shama Ilfa Amra Kamid Rav Pada. So Ilfa heard this, and whatever he said in front of Rav Pada. Right, Amar, and he said, "Klum lamano pigula lemishlamim." We only learned it from the shlamim. Mashlamim, just like by the shlamim in tfilat etzva and fegel bein, that it's not going to be mifagel. Af chatat, so to the chatat and tfilat etzva and fegel bein, it's not going to make it pigul. So says the Gemara, "V'chia kol mishlamim lamdu." What did they learn it from shlamim? Imash shlamim shelo lishma and motziv de pigul. Right, they didn't learn it from pigul. Af chatat shelo lishma, so to the chatat shelo lishma, and motziv de pigul. But what are you going to say? He said they're learning it from the extra of the pasuk. Hachanami, so to hear the kati, right? They're learning it from the extra of the pasuk, meaning the fact that it's written extra. That's where they're learning the din pigul by other things as well. And therefore, since the ikar din of pigul by other korbanot is learned from the extra portion of the pasuk, and it's not learned from a binyana from shatim, so therefore he comes and he says that it's going to be different halachot. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says to Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, I was in this attic, and that's where I heard that the tfilat etzba, the dipping of the finger in the blood, and if you're going to do it outside of the proper time, it's also going to make pigul. So Rabbi Shimon Lakish comes and he asks, they only learned from Shlamim. Just like Shlamim, the tfilat etzba is not going to make a pigul, so to hear the chatat, it should not make a pigul. So he says, what are you talking about? They learned everything from Shlamim? He says the shlamim, it's not going to make the pigul. Shelo lishma doesn't make a pigul. So to the chatat, and it does. The chatat we just said that it is a problem. So Amar Rabbi Yosef Rechanina, yes, hakol mishlamim lamdu. They did learn it from the shlamim. Hoil chutzim komo posel b'shlamim. Since chutzim komo, it is posel b'shlamim. This is what you were saying, doctor. Chutzim komo is not pigul, but it's outside of the proper place. So outside of the proper place does posel by shlamim, v'shelo lishmo posel bechatat, and lo lishmo is posel bechatat. Just like the chutzim komo is posel b'shlamim, motziv de pigul is going to take out of the pigul. So to shelo lishmo, right? He says posel bechatat, motziv de pigul, it's going to take it out of the pigul. So Rabbi Yirmiyah says mitzidat tavra, you could break it from the side. What does that mean? Chutzim komo posel b'shlamim shekenoi b'chol zvim. It's by all of them. Meaning this concept is that everything has to be done in the proper place. That's yes. So that takes it out of a pigul. But you can't say that by lo lishmo, that it's only by Pesach and a chatat. Meaning, to do with the concept of lo lishmo, it's only Pesach and chatat. To do it outside of the proper place, it's by everything. So he says, what are you going to say then? Anything which is disqualifies takes it out of pigul.
Yes, pigul doesn't apply if there's another thing that can disqualify.
Exactly, but it has to be something which is impeding it, or how did you say it? And essential. It has to be essential. If it's essential, that's going to bring it to the pigul. The same thing. If it's going to disqualify it, it's going to take it out of the pigul, but it's going to be makeva, it's going to be essential, it's going to make it into pigul. The Amar of Mari, Rav Mami says, we also learned the exact same thing. We learned it in Mishnah. This is a general rule. Kola kometz. If you do kmitza, remember kmitza is by the flower. So you come with the 3 fingers, you come and you take it like this, right? That's the flower, kmitza. Venoten, and you take it and you put it in a kli sharet. Ve'amolich, and you bring it to the mizbeach. Ve'maktif, and you bring it, right? You bring it to the mizbeach. So in all these things, if it's going to be chutz zmano, it's going to be pigul, and it's going to be chayav karet. So bishma kometz, the kmitza, that's like shchita. But it's the same thing. The shchita is by an animal. Kmitza is by the flower offering. Molich is the same thing as molich, right? The same thing, transporting. Makti, bringing it to the mizbeach, is also the same thing like zorek, like sprinkling the blood. Elanoten bekliva, but what is the pshat that you have to put it into a utensil? If you're going to tell me that it's like the receiving of the blood, the dami lekabbalah, midami, can you compare them both? Hata mimela vehachayu kashak. There, your receptacle. You just put the utensil underneath the neck and you receive the blood. You're receiving. Here, you have to actually come and put the mincha, the flower offering, into the utensil. Ella, but rather, since it's not enough if you didn't put it there, because it's not kosher, so it has to be a avodah chashuva. Meaning the Kabbalah is not the same. The Kabbalah is passive. You're receiving the blood passively. Here, you're actively coming and putting it because that's why it's avodah. It's a very important service, right? Huh?
So putting the finger is gonna with pigul intent messes it up.
Exactly.
Because it's
because it's essential. It's very important. Hachanami. So says the Gemara. No, even if you didn't do it, well, so it's like halacha. Holacha. Remember, it's like holacha. We said that the transporting was not necessary because you could be right beside the mizbeach, do the shchitan, and that's it. So same thing. So says the Gemara. No, leolam dami leka. It is considered essential. It's considered like the receiving of the blood. You told me that the receiving of the blood is passive. And here you actively have to come and put it inside. He says, given the EDVD, since by both the matan kli it's putting it in a kli sharet. What's the difference how you're putting it? Meaning at the end of the day, it has to come into a whole utensil. How do I care how it comes in, whether it's passive or active? So says Zimna, you're right. I'm going to say it's a machlok tanaim. The tani chad that tfilat etzba is going to be mifagel. The tani yedach lo mifagel. It won't be mifagelet. Is it not a machlok tanaim? Says Zimna, no. Har Rabbanan ve'har Rabbi Shimon. It's a machlok between Rabbanan. That the Rabbanan, they come and they say that it is going to be pigul, and this is Rabbi Shimon that he says it's not going to be pigul. So says, Rabbi Shimon, why do you say only about the etzba, about the finger? Hamar, I thought he said, right? He says anything which is not going to be top of 14a, anything which is not going to be brought from mizbeach hachitzon, like a shlamim, is not going to be pigul. So he says, you're right. Both of them are going to be Rabbanan, and it's not a question. One, we're talking about the outer chataot, the outer sin offerings, and one of them, which obviously there, the tfilat etzba is not going to be an avodah chashuva. It's not important. And here it's talking about the inner ones where it is going to be considered very important.